We're going to get into what this book is called Parthia, the Forgotten Ancient Superpower and its role in biblical history. And then they're showing there's some technology they had. It's going to be talking about this by Stephen M. Collins. It says here, the tribe of Ephraim leads Parthia. Listen to this. This is deep right here. So Hosea 1:6-10. God promised that he would make the Israelites too numerous to count after he expelled them from Palestine, or the Holy Land, right? The Jewish historian Josephus confirmed that the population of the 10 tribes was exceedingly numerous by the 1st century AD. With the Israelites' population increasing explosively, they came to be known by their clan names as well as their tribal names, right? And also the emblems, right? We went over this yesterday. Portions of the Bible record genealogies of ancient families and the tribes of Israel. Some call these sections the Begats, and they are often regarded as the most boring part of the Bible. However, for historical research, these sections can be invaluable. These genealogies preserve the names of the individual clans, sub-tribes of the tribes of Israel, and some of these names can be located in geographic and proper names in the post-exilic period, all right? For example, Numbers 26:35-36 records that 3 clans of the Israelite tribe of Ephraim were named the Bachrites. Listen, Bachrites, and the Eranites, and the Tahanites. Listen. So this is stuff people ignore and don't they don't know nothing about this. Where did all these people end up, you think? These are tribes of Ephraim. The Seleucid province of Bactria, which revolted along with Parthia, these are kindred nations. That's what he's trying to tell you. Bore the name of one of the clans of Ephraim in a Hellenized form. An Israelite origin for Bactria is supported by an account from Richard Fry's book, The Heritage of Persia, which state that the Bactrian language was related to the Saka. That's the same as the Sakai. The Saka is the Sakai, sons of Isaac, or at least underwent strong influence from Saka tongues. Remember, I just read the book, The Anglo-Saxons, Israelites, or the Saxon race, and how it broke down all the Saka-related nations, Sakai, Scythian, and the different nations that carried the word. Saka was one of them. The Persian word Saka referred to the Sakai, Scythians, who again are the sons of Isaac. All right. So this is all future video. We're going to connect all this. We're going to keep trying to connect, repeat it so we can get it down. All right, so we can have a clear perspective, a strong foundation, a solid foundation. The record that the Bactrians welcomed a Scythian ruler who freed them from a Greek satrap, and the fact that the Bactrians shared a linguistic heritage with the Parthians argues that the Bactrians were also Sakai or Saka, who had descended from the 10 tribes of Israel, sons of Isaac. Henry Rawlinson, in his book Bactria, states, there seems to be very little doubt that the population of Bactria was largely Scythian, and cites Justin, a classical author who wrote, the Bactrian Empire was founded by the Scythians. Numbers 26:36 also notes that another clan of the tribe of Ephraim descended from Iran, listen, and was known as the Eranites. All right, this is an Ephraim tribe, Ephraim people. a group of people known as the Iranians. Listen, Iranian was present in the region of ancient Persia and Parthia. So what is an Iranian originally? Iranians, who came out of Eranites or Iran, a son of Ephraim. Listen, Assyria had transplanted the defenders of Samaria and Ephraimite city into the cities of the Medes. Therefore, we should expect to see Ephraimite names in the Medo-Persian region. The Iranians manifested the exact Hebrew name of one of the clans of Ephraim in the area of Medo-Persia. This name has survived into modern times as the English name for modern Persia is Iran. That's what I was just saying. All right, this is a major drop here. I'm learning, guys. I'm remembering. A lot of the Bible is not in my head solidly, so I can't remember all these nations. Oh yeah, the Iranians, that's where you get Iran from. Well, Iran, Ireland, Iran. This is deep right here. So Iran was a descendant of Ephraim. That's where we get eventually the word Iran, guys. Come on. The term Iran and Iran are interchangeable. The Encyclopedia Britannica in its index section simply states Iran. See Iran. All right? Iran, see Iran. That's what Encyclopedia Britannica is telling you. It's the same thing. The capital of Iran or Iran, a son of Ephraim, Tehran, Iran also preserves the name of this Ephraimite clan. This book does not assert or imply that modern Iranians are Israelites. All right? That's a big one right there. Thanks for clearing that up, author. Same thing I'd be trying to tell you guys. Don't compare ancient peoples to the modern peoples who have those titles. It's not always the same. Not always the same. It becomes a geographic location, the name. And so people born in this place, even if they have no Israelite blood, are called Iranians today, right? But a lot of them do have ancient Israelite blood, right? So again, this book does not assert or imply that modern Iranians are Israelites, and it is clear from history that modern Iranians are principally Medo-Persian in racial origin. However, the name Iran is derived from the name of a clan of Ephraim, the 12 tribes of Israel, okay, who were placed in Medo-Persian territory by the Assyrians and lived there for many centuries, all right? Major drop. Most historical accounts assume that the name Iran originated from the term Aryan. You guys hear that? Aryan might actually come from Iran. However, historical accounts generally have not considered an Israelite alternative for the origin of the Iranians. Yeah, they've always neglected that. Now we know that it has nothing to do with more of a people, but like a noble. Aryan meant like a noble person. It might even mean Iran, possible from the line of Iran, who got the blessing, right? Joseph got the blessing, right? So Ephraim would have the blessing to his son. So, indeed, historical accounts seem unwilling to even look for the large masses of Israelites who were relocated into Asia. They just want you to forget about it. They want you to think that's just Bible stories and religion. They don't want you to think it's real history, what we've been trying to tell you. And don't mix Old Testament of the Torah with the New Testament religious allegorical Roman hijack and duplications. The case for an Israelite origin for the Iranians is very strong. Not only are the Iranians found in Medo-Persia, the correct geographical location where Israelite tribes and clans were placed, but there were many other ancient names in that region with an Israelite origin. There is evidence of considerable Semitic influence in ancient Persia, and commenting on the ancient Pahlavi or Pahlavi language of Parthia, Sanedi Ragosin states, Pahlavi does not seem to be Persian at all, but rather Semitic. That is, an enormous proportion of the words, nouns, pronouns, verbs, adverbs, prepositions, conjunctions are Semitic, while the grammar and construction are Iranian. emphasis added. All right. Again, many people telling you the same thing. The obvious reason why Pevlevi, the Parthian language, had such strong Semitic content is that the Assyrians forcibly resettled a large portion of the 10 tribes of Israel, a Semitic nation, in Middle Persian areas. Additionally, large numbers of so-called Jews were settled in Mesopotamia, or Hebrew or Israelites in Mesopotamia, by the Assyrians and Babylonians, right? Babylon exiled exilarchs, right? The descendants of those captive Israelites later became part of the Persian Empire. A lot of these became known as so-called Persians. Indeed, many Israelites or Hebrews, Daniel, Esther, Mordecai, listen, Nehemiah, and Ezra, right? Who's Ezra? Didn't Ezra write about the captivity of the 10 lost tribes in Assyria? That's why he was one of them, they're going to tell you, had very high governmental positions in the Persian Empire. Remember Daniel? Who's Daniel? He was a Babylonian exilarch. He was in captivity when he wrote his book. He might be the son of David. David had a son named Chileab or Daniel. That same person, Chileab, is Daniel. Look it up. That possible. Remember, he was of the royal lines. Daniel was of the royal lines. They don't tell you from who, but obviously, and he had a very important role in the Persian Empire, as they're telling you here. Come on now. Since both the Jews and the more numerous Israelites were Semites, they influenced the language of Persia in a Semitic direction. Later, when the Parthians, descendants of the 10 tribes of Israel, ruled Persia for centuries, their Semitic language was the dominant language in Persia. The Encyclopedia Britannica notes that Semitic nature of the Parthian Pahlavi language. The name Pahlavi or Pevlevi, Levi, right? Levi, which means Parthian. Why does their language have the word Levi in it, right? Leviticus, Levi, can be traced back for many centuries. The great peculiarity of the language is that though it is Iranian, it is full of Semitic, Aramaic words, okay? And it has the word Levi in it. Come on now. It is not at all peculiar, in parentheses, that Pahlavi, the language of the Parthians, had strong Semitic content. The reason is that the Parthians were Semites, descended from the tribe of Israel. Even the name of the Parthian language, Pahlavi or Pevlevi or Levi, contains the name of Levi, one of the tribes of Israel. Come on now. The fact that the Iranian language had strong Semitic content confirms the Iranians were Semites, not Aryans. You know, because supposedly Aryans are supposed to be white. So you got to dodge the hijack, because they are Aryans still, or noble people of royal. In some historical accounts, the Tahanites, another Scythian clan, had a role in the founding of Parthia. Danites, they are likely the Tahanites, the third clan of the Ephraimites, mentioned in Numbers 26:35. If the Tahanites were the Tahanites of Ephraim, the D and the T are linguistically similar consonants. That's true. It would mean that Parthia independence began as a result of 3 clans of the tribe of Ephraim acting in concert. All right? Maybe mixing with Danites. They were seafarers all over that place. Remember my Danite video? So maybe the Tahanites mixing with Danites become the Tahanites. I'm just saying. But definitely, as you guys can see what he's correlating, it does almost sound, and it is interchangeable, the D and the T. It would mean that Parthia's independence began as a result of 3 clans of tribes of Ephraim acting on concert. The Bachrites, Iranians, and Tahanites were most likely the Ephraimite clans of the Bachrites, the Eranites, and the Tahanites. All right? Literally almost the same. If the Hebrew connection was limited to a single name, it could be considered a coincidence. But these multiple connections add further weight to the conclusion that these names had Israelite origin. In addition, the subsequent stability of Parthia indicates that its component clans were closely related and had much in common. This stability is understandable if the above clans were all part of the tribe of Ephraim. Since Ephraimite names clearly predominate in Parthia's origin, and since the Masagetai, Man, I mean, look at how this all connects, guys. Were one of the foremost tribes of their Scythian kinsmen. It indicates that Ephraim and Manasseh, the leading tribes of the old kingdom of Israel, the leading tribes, the sons of Joseph, and the inheritors of the birthright promise of Genesis 48 that included national greatness, were the dominant tribes of the Parthians and Scythians. Body bag for the illusion, respectively. No wonder that history records a close alliance existed between the Scythians and the Parthians. Ephraim and Manasseh were brother tribes who had descended from Joseph, the favorite son of Jacob, whose name was changed to Israel. All right. It also indicates how exceedingly numerous the Israelites had become in their new Asian homelands, that large regions of Asia came to be known by Israelite tribal and clan names. God had abundantly kept his promise in Hosea 1:10 to multiply the numbers of the 10 tribes of Israel after they were exiled from the Holy Land, from America, from the true promised land. The Parthians and Scythians were obviously the people written about by Josephus as the very numerous descendants of the 10 tribes of Israel. Josephus penned these words about the status of the 10 tribes of Israel in the 1st century AD. The 10 tribes are beyond Euphrates till now and are an immense multitude and not to be estimated by numbers. The evidence affirms the statement of Josephus at the very time that Josephus wrote those words. The Euphrates River was the recognized border between the Roman and the Parthian empires. For Josephus to write from his perspective within the Roman Empire that the 10 tribes were beyond the Euphrates River was another way of saying the 10 tribes were in Parthia, even as many Americans will recognize the phrase beyond the Rio Grande to be euphemism meaning in Mexico. Many past efforts to locate the post-exilic 10 tribes of Israel have failed because of their minimalist expectations about locating tiny bands of Israelites scattered in obscure places. Based both on biblical prophecy and Josephus' secular accounts that the 10 tribes of Israel had a huge Asian population by the 1st century AD, the 10 tribes must be found among the biggest nations in Asia during the millennium after the fall of Samaria and during the lifetime of Josephus, aka Piso. Remember? That is exactly where the 10 tribes of Israel can be found. We have already seen that the Scythians and one of the largest masses of people in Asia were Israelites. We will now examine the additional evidence that the numerous and powerful Parthians were also Israelites. So it says here, the scepter shall not depart from Judah. Okay, this is what I've been saying. The right to rule, not the birthright, but the right to rule, the scepter, nor a lawgiver from between his feet until Shiloh come, and until him shall be the gathering of the people be, until the Most High come back. Genesis 49:10. It says here, King David's descendants ruled Parthia and Scythia. All right, again, we're in the book Parthia, the Forgotten Ancient Superpower and Its Role in Biblical History by Stephen Collins. This is from 2003 version, but there's other versions as well before that. So again, it says, King David's descendants ruled Parthia and Scythia. God foretold that the tribe of Judah would produce kings and rulers. The scepter promise of Genesis 49:10. And King David was promised that his descendants would always rule over the house of Israel. Jeremiah 33:17. Jeremiah's prophecy was made after the relocation of the house of Israel, the northern 10 tribes into Asia. Because Jeremiah's prophecy was made at a time when the 10 tribes were living in Asia, we should expect to find descendants of King David ruling over the 10 tribes of Israel in Asia. Throughout the Parthian, Scythian sphere of influence, kings are found with names based on the words Fares. All right, pay attention. Remember, I know a lot of you already know where this is going. We just learned about the two sons of Judah, right? So, again, a lot of kings are found with this name, the word Fares, or this word. a marker of David's royal bloodline. Matthew 1:36 confirms King David was a descendant of a Jewish patriarch named Pharez. All right, so we don't need the New Testament to confirm that. It's written in the Torah, in the book of law, in the Old Testament. Right? We know he is from the line of Pharez, not the line of Sarah, right? Okay, we just got all this right recently. That's why I had to redo these videos so I can get onto other books, more investigation now that we have a fresh take on it again. So, a Parthian Saka king, listen to this, who ruled in the area of West India, West Indies, huh? Was named Gondophares in the West Indies, huh? Fares, from the Fares line, and several kings ruling over the Scythian kingdom of Iberia. So just to be clear, this is not the same Iberian Peninsula. This is Iberia near, it says here, the Caucasus Mountain region. There was an Iberia there, guys. Were named Fares, Perez, from the Fares line, or Perez. The second book in this series noted that the term Iberia is derived from the root word Eber. All right, we got that breakdown a lot already. The father of the Hebrews. Strabo records that the Asian Iberians were the kinsmen of the Scythians, whose Israelite origin has always been demonstrated. All right, Strabo said that. The above examples show that David's descendants of the house of Pharez were ruling over widely separated nations of the 10 tribes of Israel in both the Caucasus Mountains and the region of modern India. So again, remember, put all the information, investigations we've done historically. Remember that the Khazars were in these regions too, right? The Sumerians, the Khazars, what I was saying, this is why they felt so connected to the Israelites and eventually learned from them and converted to Judaism. They were surrounded by them a lot of times. Also, many Parthian emperors had names indicating that they were also members of the Davidic line of Judah. Some of their names include the key consonants Pharez, PHRS, and the Hellenized forms of their Parthian names. Parthian kings with the names Pharaates, right? Pharaates, Pharaotes, Pharatasis include the consonants of the root word PHRS. God remembered his promise to David by guiding world events to ensure, listen, that David's descendants ruled over many Israelite nations, Parthia, Saka, Scythia, and Iberian in Asia. Just like in Europe, again, not David, but Judah's, the scepter would always be with Judah, right? A lot of times, descendants of Judah ruled, is what I've been trying to tell you. They ended up ruling. God said they would. Most High said they would. How did David's descendants from the defunct kingdom of Judah come to rule over the descendants of the 10 tribes in Asia? God can easily intervene in world affairs to keep his promises, right? God works in mysterious ways, and the Bible indicates how it happened. In 2 Kings 2:24, 8:15, we read that one of the last kings of Judah, Jehoiachin, and his wives were carried captive to Babylon by Nebuchadnezzar. Listen, that happened. Was this the end of him? Did he just disappear? He had no children. His offspring didn't just mix over there and start ruling too, maybe? Was this the end of him? Hardly. 2 Kings 25, 27, 30 shows that after 37 years of captivity, a later king of Babylon did lift up the head of Jehoiachin, king of Judah, out of prison. Listen, and he spake kindly to him and set his throne above the thrones of the kings that were with him in Babylon. Allowed him to be king in that area, right? Descendant of Judah, right? This is deep, guys. The king of Babylon ruled the Babylonian Empire, but he was served by many subordinate rulers who were vassal kings over assigned areas. That a Babylonian king gave Joachim a throne indicates that Joachim was made a vassal king over part of the Babylonian Empire. Indeed, the account states that he was set above the other vassal kings, meaning this royal descendant of King David was given a prominent rulership position in the Babylonian Empire, since there were many descendants of the 10 tribes of Israel who were subjects of the Babylonian Empire. So they gave him a king that was one of them. That's kind of deep right there, which inherited them when it conquered Assyria. It is likely that Jehoiakim was made a ruler over Israelites within the Babylonian Empire, since Jehoiakim was descended from both King David and the patriarch Phares. His sons perpetuated a dynasty that ruled over portions of the 10 tribes, first as vassal kings and then later as kings of independent nations and empires. 1 Chronicles 3:16-24 records that the royal house of David did not die out after the fall of Jerusalem, all right? Indeed, these verses record that Jehoiakim fathered many sons and grandsons, listen, all of whom carried on the royal line of King David in Asia. David's house had no shortage of royal princes to rule over the descendants of the 10 tribes. Since the Babylonian king made Jehoiakim a favored vassal king, he likely set some of Jehoiakim's sons in positions of power as well. Perhaps the Babylonians felt that the captive nations of the Assyrians, whom they inherited as subjects, would exhibit less rebelliousness if they were given their own hereditary rulers as vassal kings. A search would have found Jehoiakim, an hereditary Israelite ruler from the tribe of Judah, alive in a prison. 37 years in prison would have made Jehoiakim a very grateful when he was not only released from prison but also installed as a favored vassal king in the Babylonian Empire. All right, again, the Babylonian exilarchs. His descendants were vassal kings to the Babylonians, then the Medo-Persians, and finally became independent kings over the Parthian Empire. However, Jehoiakim's sons were not the only source of Davidic rulers over the 10 tribes of Israel. The kings of Iberia, often named Pharasmanes, listen, Phares, Mans, the Phares, I never put two and two together, right? In the Caucasus region near the Black Sea, were not captives of Assyria or Babylon. How did David's descendants come to rule in that region? One historical account states that the descendants of the 10 tribes who escaped Assyrian captivity by migrating northward into the Caucasus were led by a chief or prince whom they appointed. This group of Israelites fled Palestine before the fall of Samaria or the Holy Land, abandoning the last king of Israel to his fate. This indicates that they made a clean break with whatever dynasty was ruling Israel in its final days, and that a new hereditary prince was made the ruler over the escaping Israelites at the time they fled to the Caucasus, all right? And I think we got a little bit of this story when we're reading about the Khazars and how they ended up and found some real Hebrews, some real Israelites, listen, in the Caucasus, and they learned from them. Do you guys remember? And then they had converted. Remember the king had run into them? Oh, this sounds like this is the people they're talking about, the people who they run into, a prince of the lands of Judah. Listen, this is matching what we're reading right there. This is why they decided to convert, guys. This is what I'm saying. At the time, they fled to the Caucasus. So check out this, the royal line of King David. We got Israel, Judah from Phares, David, Iberian Scythia, King Phares, Parthian Saka, Phares, Kondo Phares, Parthia Scythia, King Pharaotis, even Pharaoh, right? Pharaoh, the right to rule would always be with Judah, huh? Christ's lineage, Phares, oh, David, Jesus, all right, now that's the hijack. They added his Christianity. All right, so they fled to the Caucasus region. There was only one other Israelite dynasty from which a prince could have come. That dynasty was the bloodline of King David, whose descendants were still ruling over the kingdom of Judah. The fact that Iberia's rulers included the name of Phares argues that this migrating body of Israel's 10 tribes picked a prince of David's royal line as their new leader. They migrated in 724-721 BC, and by 653 BC, a leader of a Scythian, Sumerian, Median alliance, all right? They're separate, right? The Sumerians are not Scythians, but they were in connections in that time. That's what I was saying earlier, guys. Put all the research together. We're going to go over it all again. We're going to try to make sense out of everything the more as we keep learning, right? So, an alliance between Scythians, sons of Isaac, Sumerians, and Medians against Assyria was led by a person named Pharotis. The name Pharotes includes the root word PHRS, indicating a link to the David's royal line of Phares. This is deep. Even the Sumerians were under them for a while, huh? The name of Pharaotes is similar to the names of later Parthian kings, Pharates or Pharatasis. This indicates that Pharaotes was a Scythian baron, a Parthian royal name, even though Parthia would not become independent for another 400 years. So that shows the link between the Parthians and Scythians. They had the same name for their rulers. It is apparent that the Davidic rulers of the line of Phares were ruling over Scythians about a century before Jehoiachin was made a vassal king of the Babylonians circa 555 BC. The above evidence confirms that after Judah fell, there was never a time when David did not have descendants ruling over some portion of the 10 tribes of Israel. All right, this is deep right here. This also confirms that Most High guided the destinies of the 10 tribes of Israel, even after they had left the Holy Land. Arsacids, the first king of Parthia, is credited with having a Scythian origin. When he liberated the Parthians from the Seleucid Greeks, so-called Greeks, his descendants ruled Parthia for the entirety of its existence, almost 5 centuries. Since Arsacids and his dynasty, the Arsacids, bore the name of Isaac, Arsaces, and since some of the Arsacid rulers included the root word of Phares, PHRS, in their names, it is evident that Arsaces was a descendant of King David. While David's descendants were ruling several Israelite nations and empires in Asia, the reader should not assume that their reigns were always enlightened ones. David was given the blessing that his seed would perpetually have rulers over the 10 tribes of Israel. However, David's descendants were also under a curse. When David committed adultery with Bathsheba, remember this, David had fallen off just like Solomon and everything. They got trouble with the Most High. We know the story, right? So when David committed adultery with Bathsheba and afterwards arranged the death of her husband, Uriah, both acts were tremendous abuses of power. Nathan the prophet was sent by the Most High to deliver a curse upon David. In 2 Samuel 12:10, Nathan gave to David God's decree that the sword shall never depart from thine house. The sword symbolizes that death by violence and murder would be commonplace among David's descendants. Wow, you guys hear that? This curse began in David's own lifetime as Ammon, David's eldest son, was killed by Absalom, David's favorite son. Absalom was then killed during a rebellion against David, and another of David's sons, Adonijah, was killed by King Solomon, David's son, via Bathsheba. Are you guys hear this? Uncomfortable truth a lot of people don't speak on. This curse was also evident in the ruling house of Parthia. As we shall see in the next chapter, many of the Parthia's kings killed their royal relatives in order to eliminate potential rivals to the throne. Yet no matter how many murders the Arsacids or Arsacids perpetrate among themselves, the Parthians always insisted that their rulers had to be blood members of the Arsacid family. Parthia is an unusual case among the empires of the ancient world. While most empires had many different dynasties, Parthia's empire lasted almost 5 centuries and had only one dynasty. The ancient kingdom of Judah also had only one dynasty during its 4 centuries of independent existence. The dynasties of Judah and Parthia were both descended from King David. Unconditional promise. So, was unconditional promise to the house of David was the reason for the unbroken dynasties in Judah and Parthia. So again, he quotes 2 Samuel 7:8-16 and Jeremiah 33:17.